The sound of metal scraping against wood tore through the silence, jolting me upright in my seat. My heart raced as I glanced over to the darkened corner of the room where I had last seen him. The flicker of a screen illuminated the chilling truth. I was not alone, and the truth behind his smiling face was about to unravel before my very eyes. It had started as a harmless online friendship. I was just a high school senior, feeling out of place in a world that seemed to overlook me. My days were filled with the mundane routine of school, sports, and homework, but nights were different. Late-night chats filled with laughter and shared secrets became my escape. I met Ethan in an online chat room where we found solace in each other's stories, our lives contrasting yet somehow parallel. Ethan lived in a quiet suburb of Detroit, far from my small town in Ohio. At first glance, he was perfect, a confident young man with a bright smile and an adventurous spirit. We spent hours talking about our hopes and dreams. He was kind, funny, and attentive, but I soon learned that his charm was laced with something sinister, an undercurrent of possessiveness that I was too naive to recognize at the time. As months passed, my feelings deepened. I fantasized about our first meeting, envisioning a romantic reunion that would change everything. But every time I mentioned visiting him, Ethan's demeanor would shift. He would question my intentions, demand to know who I'd be with, and express jealousy over my friendships. I brushed it off as normal teenage insecurity, convincing myself it was just passion. However, with every passing day, the walls of his control began to close in around me. The tipping point came on a warm summer evening in July 2020. My parents had gone out for the night, leaving me alone in the house. I sat in my room, scrolling through our messages when Ethan's texts turned aggressive. "Don't you dare think about meeting anyone else," he warned, his words dripping with possessiveness. At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. I knew I had to see him, to confront what was brewing beneath the surface of our relationship. I booked a flight to Detroit, convinced that love would conquer all. By the time I arrived in Detroit in August, excitement clashed with anxiety. Ethan met me at the airport, his grin wide, but I noticed the flicker of something darker in his eyes. I managed to shake off the doubtful thoughts, believing that the thrill of our first encounter would wash away my concerns. We spent the first few days exploring the city, but I could feel a subtle tension growing. Each time I picked up my phone to check messages, Ethan's gaze would sharpen, his excitement dimming with every beep. One evening, we returned to Ethan's house, a modest dwelling tucked away in a cul-de-sac. The place felt eerily quiet, as if it held secrets of its own. As we settled into his living room, Ethan's demeanor changed. He locked his gaze on me, intensity radiating from his posture. The once charming boy now loomed like a shadow, and the sweetness of our online interactions seemed to evaporate into thick air. Suddenly, he yelled, "You think you can just decide when to leave?" My heart sank as a knot formed in my stomach. That night turned into a nightmare. I tried to remain calm, attempting to talk him down, but his body language was aggressive. I feared for my safety as he began to pace the room, rattling off accusations and slights that made little sense. In a moment of desperation, I grabbed my phone to call for help. Ethan snatched it from my hands, throwing it across the room. "You don't get to leave me. Not now," he shouted, the facade of control crumbling as he revealed the monster lurking beneath his skin. I managed to break free from his grasp, rushing outside and running into the night, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had never been so terrified. The normally placid street felt like a maze, and I had no idea where to go. I could hear Ethan shouting behind me, his chilling voice echoing like a horrific chant. As I stumbled across the road, a car screeched to a halt, the driver's face a mask of shock. They quickly called the police, and within moments I was safe. But questions lingered in my mind. When authorities arrived, I was shaken, recounting the events to officers. They listened intently, their expressions grave. I described Ethan as a boy with bright blue eyes and a smile that had tricked me for so long. After filing a report, I thought I could finally move on, but the haunting realization of his unpredictable nature stayed with me. Weeks turned into months, and I returned to my normal life, yet I couldn't shake off the dread that lingered around corners and in shadows. In November, fate took a bizarre turn when I learned about Ethan's history with online friendships. A news report surfaced about strange characters from distant lands turning up in my small town. An investigation had begun after a string of disappearances. Young girls who vanished without a trace, all linked to internet contacts. My heart raced as I realized the potential danger Ethan posed, not just to me, but to others. I began piecing together the chilling story of his past, fueled by a blend of anger and fear. The investigation widened, and I found myself downtrodden as I learned the gravity of the situation. Each story of a girl gone missing felt like a dagger to my heart. The police admitted they believed Ethan had been involved. I couldn't shake the guilt. Had I known his true nature earlier, could I have helped them save someone else? The endless cycle of questions taunted me. What if he decided I was next? What if his passion turned dark for anyone else, too? Months passed, and just as I was beginning to heal, a chilling update came through the news. Ethan had been arrested, but not for the incidents with me. No, it was far worse. He was linked to the murder of a young girl who had traveled to meet him, believing in the same twisted love that had nearly cost me everything. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had narrowly escaped a fate that was all too real for someone else. The horror of online relationships had come full circle, and the chilling truth left me frozen in fear. As trials began, I attended, my heart heavy. I watched as families mourned their lost loved ones, and I realized the true impact of my brush with darkness. The courtroom felt like a cage, each moment a reminder of the lives shattered by a boy who had woven a web of deceit. I couldn't help but wonder how many others had come close to having their lives taken away by someone who claimed to love them. The questions still remain. How many more are out there? How many victims inhabit the shadows of online connections? Even months later, the story still haunted me. I would wake up at night, drenched in sweat, prompted by nightmares of what could have been. The chilling truth lingered like smoke in my mind, a repetitive echo of fear and regret. The last message I received from Ethan played like a broken record in my head. You will never escape me. Those words haunted me endlessly, casting doubt on every online interaction I had since. And as I sat in the dark, questions loomed large. How could someone who professed love turn so easily to destruction? The sound of sirens pierced through the quiet suburban night, echoing through the empty street, as shadows danced under the flickering streetlight. I stood frozen on the front porch, heart pounding in my chest, every instinct screaming to run back inside. I watched the chaos unfold as officers swarmed the house across the street, unaware that my life was about to veer into the horrifying unknown. My name is Mia, and I was just an ordinary girl with ordinary dreams. I lived in a small town in Indiana, where life was mostly predictable. School, friends, part-time jobs, it all felt mundane. But that all changed when I met Josh in an online gaming forum. He was from a large city in California, far away but utterly captivating. Our connection blossomed through late-night gaming sessions and long conversations filled with hopes and dreams. He quickly became everything I looked forward to during my dreary high school days. At first, it was innocent, just two kids finding solace in one another in a digital landscape. Josh was charismatic and charming, weaving tales of his life that felt larger than life itself. He shared stories of his adventures, his friends, and the hustle of living in a big city. I was hooked, losing track of time as we laughed and chatted into the early hours of the morning. Our friendship quickly developed into something deeper, something that I believed could blossom into love, despite the miles that separated us. Over the next year, our relationship deepened. We shared our secrets, our fears, and I was completely enamored. But as the months rolled by, I started to notice a change. Josh began to exhibit possessive behavior. He wanted to know who I talked to, who I was with, and why I hadn't checked in more often. What I had initially brushed off as passion gradually began to feel like chains tightening around me. I could feel the world closing in, yet the fantasy of our love kept me locked in place. In early March 2021, when spring began to bloom, I finally decided to plan a visit. We mutually agreed that meeting in person would solidify our bond. My heart raced with excitement, despite the lingering apprehensions about what I might find. I imagined all the places we'd go and the memories we'd create. But the night before my flight, Josh's text turned dark. I don't want you to go. You're mine. His messages became frantic, a web of desperation that sent chills down my spine. Ignoring my gut, I boarded the flight the next day, convincing myself that love would conquer all doubts. I arrived in California, and the air was thick with tension. Josh greeted me with a smile, but his eyes betrayed something else, an unsettling shadow that flickered behind his charming facade. We spent the first day together visiting places he had mentioned, but with each passing moment, I felt like I was slipping deeper into a labyrinth of uncertainty. The turning point came one night when we returned to Josh's apartment. We were about to watch a movie when a small argument erupted over a trivial topic. Suddenly, everything escalated. He yelled at me, throwing the remote against the wall, shattering something in me. He closed the distance between us, his demeanor changing from loving to menacing. In an instant, I felt trapped, and as I glanced toward the door, I knew I had to escape before it was too late. I sprinted down the hallway, my breath quickening as I fled to the elevator. Josh's voice echoed behind me, twisted in anger. I hit the ground floor, bursting through the doors into the night air, panic rising in my chest. My heart pounded as I desperately called an Uber. I could hear him shouting from behind me as I jumped into the car, frantically giving the driver my address. I managed to make it home unharmed, but the specter of fear lingered long after I shut the door. Days passed as I recovered from the shock. Josh called relentlessly, leaving messages that rubbed my skin raw with anxiety. But then a news alert flashed on my screen. A young woman in California had gone missing after being last seen with her online boyfriend, a chilling reminder of how vulnerable I had truly been. My heart sank as I read the details, so many parallels to my own story. I felt the cold grasp of reality tightening around me. As the investigation unfolded, police described Josh in chilling terms. Witness testimonies revealed a pattern. He wasn't just possessive, but potentially dangerous. I shuddered at the thought of what might have happened to that girl. Each day felt heavy, steeped in uncertainty as I conversed with investigators who wanted to know everything about my relationship with him. They couldn't help but draw parallels, and my fear deepened as they shared the stories of girls who had gone missing after trusting their online companions. Weeks cascaded into months, each day a haunting reminder of how close I had come to becoming a victim. The girl's case remained unsolved, and my heart ached for her family. I wondered if I had been saved by mere chance or a narrow window of wit. The police received numerous leads, but each turned cold. The world beyond my door felt suffocating, and my online interactions had become fraught with fear. How many others had crossed paths with monsters wrapped in charm? At long last, news broke of a breakthrough in the investigation. They had found evidence linking Josh to the girl's disappearance. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of emotions, each wave crashing harder than the last. My relief was intertwined with guilt. Could I have done more to save her? As I learned more about the case, I discovered the gruesome truth, a hidden life of manipulation, betrayal, and violence that lay beneath his charming exterior. As the trial approached, I grappled with sleepless nights filled with nightmares of what could have been. The courtroom felt like a theater of horrors, watching families plead for justice amid the shadows of their losses. Each testimony echoed in my mind long after the day had ended. In those moments, I wondered how many more stories would remain untold for every girl who had ventured into the dark world of online romance. The haunting question remained: how do we guard our hearts against the darkness that lurks in the virtual shadow? I walked away from that courtroom forever changed, the weight of fear clinging to my skin. Long after the trial ended, I still couldn't shake the thoughts of those girls, their faces fading into history, lost in the web of online connections. Would their stories echo through time? And with every new message that lit up my phone, I hesitated. The warnings echoed in my mind like a sinister chant, urging me to question everything. How many more lost souls await in the dark corners of the internet? I sat across from the detective, my fingers trembling as I clutched the edge of the table. The truth hung heavy in the air, and with each question, the chilling realization of the past washed over me. How had I, a simple girl with dreams of love, found myself tangled in a nightmare that threatened to engulf everything I held dear? My name is Lily, and I've always been a romantic at heart. I grew up in a quaint town in Maine, a place where everyone knew each other and life seemed peaceful. But when I discovered online gaming, my world expanded. It was here I met Aaron, a boy with a captivating charm and a knack for storytelling. We bonded over late-night raids and shared interests, and before long he wasn't just a player, he was the love I had always dreamed of. At first, everything felt magical. Every shared laugh, every late-night chat. Aaron painted pictures of a future together, and I felt alive in a way I had never experienced before. But as the days turned into weeks, an unsettling pattern began to emerge. With every passing conversation, I noticed his possessiveness intensifying, casual questions morphing into demands. It was all too subtle for me to realize at the time, but seeds of doubt were being sown, and soon the warmth of our connection would turn cold. My heart raced when I received a text from Aaron one afternoon in April 2020. "You need to stop talking to that girl from your game. She's a distraction." My breath caught in my throat. I hesitated, trying to process the words. "But she's just a friend," I replied. As I hit send, I felt the ominous clouds of control swirling overhead. With every response, Aaron's anger radiated through the screen. I had crossed an unseen boundary in his mind, and I could feel the walls closing around me. In July, I made a decision to meet Aaron. I was swept away by dreams of romance, convinced that meeting in person would solve everything. I arranged a visit to his town in Florida, ignoring the warning bells that rang in my mind. The day came, and as I touched down at the airport, excitement buzzed through me like electricity. But as soon as I stepped into his world, the magic shattered, leaving a trail of disbelief in its wake. We spent the first few hours together exploring the area, but I quickly noticed a shift in his demeanor. Aaron was no longer the attentive boyfriend I knew online. The charming boy I had fallen for melted away, revealing a darker side. His laughs were forced, and every time a girl passed by, I could feel his tension rising. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just nerves, but as the hours passed, the dread settled deeper into my stomach. That evening, we returned to his apartment, and I noticed his frustration boiling over. We started arguing over something trivial, but before I knew it, he snapped. He hurled insults, his voice rising to a fever pitch. I felt trapped in his anger. Every harsh word felt like a blow, and his eyes burned with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. It struck me then that the boy I had known online was gone, replaced by a stranger wrapped in fury. Panicked, I jumped up, rushing toward the door. Before I could reach it, he grabbed my wrist, pulling me back with unexpected strength. "You can't just leave me," he shouted, his grip tightening. My world shattered. I grappled with the realization that someone I had trusted could turn in an instant. In a moment of desperation, I managed to break free from his hold and bolted into the night, adrenaline propelling me to safety. I managed to find refuge at a nearby hotel and called the police. It felt surreal, and even as I recounted what had happened, disbelief still settled heavily on my shoulders. They took my statements seriously, and I was grateful for their support, yet the gnawing fear remained. Would Aaron come looking for me? Just how far had he fallen into darkness? I felt like I was in a nightmare, where the rules had changed overnight, and the person I loved was now a threat. Over the next few weeks, news reports on the rise of online dating violence flooded my feeds. Disturbing stories of relationships gone wrong sent chills down my spine. I couldn't help but feel an eerie connection with each victim's story. Their names became etched in my mind, and I began to realize I was not alone. There were countless others like me who had faced similar fates at the hands of someone they thought they knew. I started to piece together the chilling connections of our narratives, wondering how many had fallen through the cracks. Then came the horrifying twist. Days turned into weeks, and just as I thought I could move on, police announced a break in a string of violent attacks linked to online relationships. My heart raced as they released a composite sketch of a suspect. The image sent shivers down my spine. It looked just like Aaron. Time seemed to freeze as I processed the implications. How could I have been so blind? Did I nearly walk into the jaws of horror? The investigation revealed a shocking pattern, a spree of violence that had left multiple victims in its wake. Each girl's story echoed mine, and the weight of guilt settled heavily on my heart. I grappled with the terror of what could have happened, what could have been. The fact that I had brushed away the signs continued to haunt me. I questioned everything about our relationship. Was love ever innocent, or just an illusion cloaked in darkness? When Aaron was finally apprehended, I felt a mix of relief and horror. His charm had been a mask for something far darker, manipulation honed over years of online interactions. As I watched the trial unfold, hearing testimonies of his other victims, I couldn't help but wonder how many girls had fallen prey to the wolf in sheep's clothing. The chilling truth was undeniable. I had stared into the abyss and nearly lost myself in its depths. As I left the courtroom, a wave of disbelief washed over me. I was left with the haunting question of how many others had been manipulated and harmed in the shadows of the online world.